Thank you all for, I guess, sticking around for this. So this presentation is titled Driving a Herd of Bison to Their Death. I gave it at the Journey in December, and I kind of tried to jog my memory over the past few nights. Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask kind of maybe in the midst of it, just to make this more conversational. To outline what I'll be discussing tonight, first I'll cover the 2022 Bison Kill Site Research Project background, then a brief discussion of archaeological principles that you will all probably be overly familiar with, and then a positing of a probable lifeway of the people who used the studied bison kill site, and then how bison hunting was done on foot, and then finally using digital landscape analyses to try to understand how the studied bison kill was used by past people. To give you the background, in 2022, Augustana Archaeology Lab professionals, students from Augustana and SDAS volunteers excavated, pedestrian surveyed, and geospatially analyzed an archaeological site classified as a bison kill in central South Dakota. Analyzed collagen from a bison tooth found at the site in 2017 yielded an associated date of 1180 to 1270 AD with a probable link to the initial Middle Missouri variant of the Plains tradition, and I'll get into a little bit more descriptive information about the initial Middle Missouri variant later on in the presentation that you can all feel free to critique and maybe discuss following the presentation. The site 39 HD 115 that was studied is interpreted as a bison kill site because of its bone and artifact assemblages and its landscape position. That at minimum 5 bison were killed. One, a 2-month-old, suggests the site may have been used only once in the summer. So, 39 HD 115 because of having only 5 minimum number of individuals in terms of bison, and one including what seems to be a young bison makes the site a probable location of a kill in the summer, that was used in the summer. Here is an image of lithics recovered from the site, and they were dated by Mayer in 2022 in the SDAS newsletter, and they based on, and I was kind of curious about these too, so I looked into trying to type the points that you see in the center here, and I pulled out or looked at Jeb Taylor's projectile points guide, and I think that they most matched the prairie side notch type, which more or less corroborates the date in the newsletter and kind of can match up with this date. So they kind of fits within that range. So this is probably old news to all of you, but archaeology is the human-focused study of the past. Archaeological interpretations are based on physical remains, so remains like human garbage or pollen. Analogy is very important in archaeological interpretation, and the presence of certain physical remains can indicate things that happened in the past, whether they be the way the people used to live or climate that existed at the time. And so like an example of an analogy that can be drawn between ethnographic work and archaeology would just be kind of in general, like if an ethnographer or an anthropologist sees a group of people, say they're manufacturing stone tools, and then takes note of the debris that is produced due to stone tool manufacturing, and then goes out on an archaeological site and notices similar types of debris, then that anthropologist could infer that the same process of lithic reduction to create stone tools is being done at this site. And it's kind of the same way with plants that are identified at archaeological sites, or I guess pollen that's identified in association with archaeological sites, or just like in dated sediments in a particular area. So if you're seeing pollen that's associated with plants that exist in climates colder than the one that exists in a particular area where pollen is found in today, then you could infer that a colder climate was present in the past. So like, I don't know if this is a true example, but I've noticed, or I think I've read that balsam firs are more associated with boreal forest. So if you were seeing balsam fir pollen down here where we really don't have it, in sediments associated with like 11,000 BC, then you could infer that the climate here was colder back then. So that's kind of how that process can work. And soil accumulation and site formation is also important to consider in archaeology. And sediment and soil accumulation can eventually bury items once on the surface, but erosion can prevent or erase this process. So not everywhere is an archaeological site going to form. The conditions have to be right. And, just because there's erosion doesn't mean that all the evidence is going to be erased of any previous human occupation either. So it's a kind of a really complex process that needs to be accounted for in interpreting archaeological sites, but it's a very important component or piece of archaeology. So now that we kind of have a background, a very general background of this research project and of archaeology in general, just to jog your memory, the first question that I want to address is, who was bison hunting at this site around 800 years ago? So to kick things off, I have this generalized Plains archaeological timeline, and I apologize for the crudity of this, but it is kind of, I think, fun to present just because of the broadness of it and kind of trying to cover this in a simplistic enough way where people can develop, that rudimentary perspective that you can then refine. So take this with a grain of salt. This is very general, but previous to 11,000 BC, that is when we see an influx of people into South Dakota, and there are interpretations of people migrating to North America across the Bering Strait from Asia, or along its coast. Those are kind of common archaeological interpretations of how North America came to be populated, and South Dakota or the northern plains are kind of a part of that process, so to speak. And during this time period, it's important to note that South Dakota was still partially glaciated at this time, and the archaeological site, or one archaeological site, that kind of kicks things off in terms of the Paleo-Indian period is Lang-Ferguson, the mammoth hunting site in what was Shannon County, and I believe is now Oglala Lakota County. These people were highly mobile, And so let me go back to South Dakota being glaciated. So the James River Valley still had a glacial lobe present at this time. And, you know, I mean, it was a piece of this very large continental glacier that basically, you know, spanned the entirety of the North American continent, this big sheet of ice that was 2 miles thick in some places. And it shaped the landscape that we live on today. So it's my understanding that the Missouri River boundary, or like the Missouri River, where the Missouri River is now, was I guess associated with where sort of the most recent, I don't want to say glacial maximum, but glacial advance came to, and it rerouted rivers along its edge. So east of the Missouri River, you have more recently glaciated sediments, and west of the Missouri River, you have you know, less recently glaciated sediments. And oftentimes you'll see, like, I think in the area near the Platte Winter Bridge, on the east side you have glacial sediments, and on the west side you have shale, Cretaceous shale. So that kind of puts, you know, puts things in perspective, and there's a pretty stark contrast between those two sides of the river. But yes, in the Paleo-Indian period, these groups were highly mobile. We see the same type of artifacts in Minnesota that we see in New Mexico. So like this, you know, Folsom Clovis culture. So people are using, you know, similar types of tools or lithic technology across a wide swath of the landscape. They're hunting megafauna, like at Lang-Ferguson, so they're hunting mammoth and really large bison, but that didn't preclude plant use and consumption, and obviously the climate was colder at this point in time, much colder, and I think you know, the site that we were talking about, maybe visiting, Hudson Mang, I think I've read that some of the die-off associated with that could have been climate related. So the climate wasn't hospitable to megafauna at this time, or bison at this time. Next, so from 11,000 to 6,000 BC is the span of this Paleo-Indian period, roughly. And then next on the timeline, we have what's called the Archaic period, and that spans from roughly 6,000 to 0 BC. And during this point in time, there's more localized foraging, so artifact types are confined to more sort of smaller portions of the landscape, unlike the, you know, really wide-ranging cultures of the Paleo-Indian period. You have, you know, common artifact types that exist within, I don't want to say like ecologically uniform, but there's more emphasis on regions with kind of a similar ecology for groups of people that use specific lithic technology. And during this time, bison hunting is very important, and the climate is warmer and drier than it is today. Next on the general timeline, we have the woodland period, and that spans from about 0 to 1000 AD. At this point in time, there's archaeological evidence of people making use of, maybe farming is not the right word, but horticulture. And there's more sedentism, so people are moving around or seem to be moving around less than they were in the Archaic. And this is where pottery and the bow and arrow seem to enter the archaeological record. There's evidence of them being prevalent. And at this point in time, the climate is more temperate, so more like it is today. And then following the woodland period, we have the Plains Village period, spanning from 1000 to 1500 AD. And at this point in time, we see larger earth lodge villages and kind of a ramping up of some of the technology that's prevalent during the woodland period. And following that, we have the post-contact period after 1500, about 1500 AD, where we see an influx of European people and their goods, and also horses reintroduced to North America after their disappearance following the Ice Age. So now to cover a little more about the initial Middle Missouri variant specifically. So the origin of the Middle Missouri variant of the Plains Village tradition, which falls in this portion of the broad timeline, is probably the result of a migration from of people from northwest Iowa or the southwest Minnesota area. And I think I've read that this could have been groups related to the Mill Creek culture. And these people are the Middle Missouri, are likely ancestors of the Mandan and Hidatsa, who are living in the same region hundreds of years later using a similar life way involving farming on floodplains while residing in earth lodge villages. When looking into the artifact assemblages of initial Middle Missouri, there were clear commonalities with Mandan and Hidatsa related artifacts, or what's documented ethnographically for the Mandan and Hidatsa using in the early historic period. And because of that, probable initial Middle Missouri variant seasonal cycle is able to be discerned from the artifacts that are present, and also the seasonal round that's documented for the Hidatsa and Mandan. So in the spring, initial Middle Missouri variant peoples probably planted vegetables in river valleys below established earth lodge villages. In the summer and early fall was a period of gardening, hunting, ceremonial life, and war. This kind of concluded, or I guess near the tail end of this, a large bison hunt happened with, not necessarily with the hunters living in teepees, but going to another location away from the village to conduct this hunt. And that happened prior to crop harvest and then pit storage of those crops, probably. In the fall and winter, earth lodge villages break apart into smaller groups and scatter over a wider area, and they tended to exist at this time living on densely wooded floodplains. And I think that Hidatsa and Mandan lived in more temporary earth lodges. And the reason that they left, or the reasons posited for them leaving the their main earth lodge village in the background literature, is related to them being worried about depleting firewood close to their main earth lodge village. In addition to that, living on densely wooded floodplains would have provided more shelter from the cold and wind during this point in the year. It's also good to note that smaller scale hunting, gathering, and fishing is happening throughout all seasons in this round, and that initial Middle Missouri variant people tended to have square or more rectangular earth lodges, and these villages tended to have anywhere from 200 to 1,300 people, according to the background literature that I reviewed. So to give you kind of a clearer picture in your head, here are some historic paintings to show you what some of these Hidatsa and Mandan villages look like. So here is a Hidatsa village, and I think this is along the Missouri, that was painted by George Catlin during his trips up the river. And you can see the earth lodges on a terrace above this river. So presumably, they're planting crops on the floodplain and living above where a flood might affect. Here you can see the inside of an earth lodge. So you see the supports holding up the material and kind of what it might have looked like inside an earth lodge. Here are some people fishing, and I think this is a village, a Mandan village in North Dakota. So you can see where it resides, kind of in relation to the floodplain. And here is a ceremony taking place related to bison. So it's called the bull dance, and this emphasizes how important bison were to these people's subsistence. Understanding bison behavior was likely an important thing for Mandan because of their reliance on bison. And yeah, I mean, that these earth lodges are round isn't really probably the way that they looked during the initial Middle Missouri variant, but apart from that, there are a lot of commonalities. So this may give you a clearer picture of what life was like back then for these people that use the bison kill site. So the importance of bison as a resource is for a variety of reasons. Bison could be used as food. The meat could be eaten or consumed fresh or dried. The hides could be used as a possible temporary shelter. Blankets, clothes. The bones could be used as tools. An example of this is scapula hoes, so using the bison shoulder blade as a digging or garden maintenance tool. And also the bone grease could be used in the production of pemmican by combining it with dried meat and choke cherries. So now that we kind of know a little bit more, we've covered a little bit more about the villages and how the initial Middle Missouri variant people probably lived and what their seasonal round was like. Here are some locations or a sample of contemporaneous village sites that were present at the same time as the bison kill, and the highlighted county in which the bison kill resided. So presumably people who were living in these villages, maybe one or maybe multiple villages, came to this county to hunt bison during that seasonal round. So that leads to this question: how were bison hunted without horses? And moving or driving bison was an integral part of hunting bison when people were hunting on foot. And there were a few techniques that could be used to move bison, one of which is kind of referred to as calling bison. And this could involve dressing as a bison to lure a herd toward the person that was dressed as a bison. And there's discussion of this person dressed as a bison acting like a calf, and the herd chasing them to try to bring them back into the herd. Startling bison was also used, and this consisted of waving blankets and shouting, which can push the bison away, and used historically, I should say. So the initial Middle Missouri variant people might have used this technique as well to push bison. And here, this is another Catlin painting, and it just shows people disguised as animals, you know, to manipulate bison. And I think in this case, they're dressed as wolves, and the bison are less concerned with wolves than they would be people, which is maybe not the, you know, most intuitive thing to take in, but shows people, you know, dressing as animals to try to, or dressing as game to try to manipulate bison. So there are a few different types of bison kills. There are jumps that involve pushing the bison toward or getting the bison to go down a steep slope where they will hopefully injure or kill themselves in a hunt. There are also impoundments or traps, and these are used to contain bison, so that way they can be dispatched, usually with projectile points. And one thing that I encountered in Grinnell's ethnographic work is that impoundments or traps could be created from brush as long as bison can't see out. So basically, like, you don't have to build you might not have to build a sturdy corral, or maybe you know, initial Middle Missouri variant people, they may not have to have built a sturdy corral to contain the bison, so they might have been able to build up brush around an area, and then if they had enough hides to throw over the brush, or could make the brush opaque so that bison couldn't see through it, then once people directed bison into this impoundment and you know, maybe shut some kind of a gate or enclose them in an impoundment, then the bison wouldn't try to, you know, go through the wall. It was a tendency for them to want to not make contact with what appeared to be an impassable object. And there are also general kill sites where it's unclear which combination of techniques to kill were used. And there are also isolated drag lines where there's no clear connection with a jump or trap, but seem to be indications of people moving bison along a certain route. So if you see a bunch of, you know, stacks of rocks or cairns in an area where it appears that you know, there's other evidence of people using the area for bison hunting, but there's no clear, you know, jump or trap, then you have an isolated drag line. And it's important to note that these kill sites can operate upslope or downslope, using a corral or using natural topography, and with principles of stampede or with principles of exhaustion. So there are a wide variety of ways that bison can be harvested. Here is a painting depicting a bison jump, and you can see the bison being driven off of a steep slope or a cliff, and that you know, the fall will likely kill or hurt them. Here, bison are shown being directed into a corral over here, or a pound, and you can kind of see the funneling that's being done using landmarks to kind of facilitate the direction into this enclosure. And here, this was kind of just an interesting type of bison kill that I found a painting of, where the people are trapping bison in snowdrifts and then walking up to them in snowshoes and dispatching them that way with spears. So kind of an interesting example of a trap. Here we see grizzly bears taking advantage of bison running along a gully, and people would take advantage of bison's vulnerability in gullies as well, and that'll be covered more later. So how were bison hunted at 39 HD 115, to get back to this site that we're doing research on? Now that we know a number of different ways that this could have happened, how was it happening in central South Dakota at this specific bison kill that we researched? So we sought to answer the question, how could bison have been driven to 39 HD 115 from the surrounding prairie? That's a good place to start, because the way that they're driven can indicate what type of kill was being used. Geographic information systems-based analyses have been conducted on other bison kill sites to identify the kill's likely associated drive lane routes. So there is a precedent for this set by previous research. The Archaeology Laboratory at Augustana University conducted least cost path analyses and viewshed analyses to identify drive lanes the bison drive may have used and to attempt to determine the type of bison kill represented at 39 HD 115. And here is a aerial imagery draped three-dimensional model to show you the bone bed's location on the landscape. So this is 39 HD 115 center point right here, and that just shows you, where it lies in relation to the highest part of the land, lowest part of the land, and gullies and such. So to give you a little bit clearer description of the geospatial analyses conducted, least cost path analysis was used in this study to determine the route between two specified points with the least amount of slope change. And this was done multiple times, with the idea being that the identified routes would be the easiest routes for bison to traverse across the landscape to the kill site. Viewshed analysis was used in this study to determine if a jump point or trap would have been visible to a bison at specific places along a viable least cost path, with the thought that if the bison can see the jump or trap coming, they're going to try to avoid it. So it's best if the jump point or trap is hidden from view while traversing along these routes, identified by least cost path analysis. So there's a little bit of a caveat with this though, where the digital elevation models available have modern infrastructure in them. So before these analyses were done, the modern infrastructure had to be removed from the digital elevation models, digital elevation model, so that it better represented the landscape at around 1200 AD, before these roads, stock dams, and cellular towers that were present in the digital model were constructed. In order to do this, modern infrastructure was encompassed with polygons, then digital points, or I should say digital polygons, then digital points with individual elevation values generated around the polygon, points with individual elevation values were generated around polygon boundaries. Following that, an interpolation was done between points to generate a three-dimensional raster that sort of approximated what the portions of landscapes that were encompassed with polygons that had modern infrastructure, what like, those pieces of the landscape were like. And then these interpolated pieces were spliced into the original digital elevation model to try to approximate what the landscape might have been like at 1200 AD. So here are areas encompassed with, infrastructure polygons, so to speak. This is encompassing a stock dam here. This is encompassing, or these are encompassing cellular towers, and this gray polygon is encompassing roads. So here is one of those cellular towers in an aerial image, depicted in an aerial image. This is what that cellular tower looks like within the unconditioned digital elevation model. Here that cellular tower is encompassed by points with elevation values that were derived from the digital elevation model. And here is what happens when you interpolate between those points to try to approximate using basically statistical averaging to determine what the landscape might have been like in this area without the infrastructure present. And here it is spliced in. So the cellular tower, evidence of it is now removed from the digital elevation model. And here is a highway close to the site. Here is what it looks like in a digital elevation model, or in the digital elevation model. And this is what it looks like after the interpolation process. So it's not a perfect representation of what the landscape was like, but at least this won't block, a least cost path like a raised highway would if you're trying to approximate a bison drive lane location. So after the conditioning of the digital elevation model, then it was time for least cost path and viewshed analyses to happen. That involved the creation of least cost paths that determined routes with the least amount of slope change between points, and the generation of viewshed rasters to determine if bison can see a jump or trap along a potential drive lane, and then a determination of the most viable estimated drive lane routes was made by analyzing least cost path shape, path cost, and the visibility of a trap or jump area along a created least cost path. So here are a bunch of start points, and the start points were kind of created, at 20 points were created at 500 meter interval around the bone bed associated with this kill site. And this is what the least cost paths, generated least cost paths look like moving across the landscape. And here are the least cost paths that are present at a 500 meter distance. And you can see that there's a lot of convergence that happens. And because of this, and because of the proximity of these closer start points to the kill site location, these were the sections of paths that were analyzed more closely. And these were the lowest cost paths to the south and to the north of the kill site. This eastern route is unsupported due to its multiple directional changes that would likely be difficult to keep bison moving along.
Whoa. Whoa.
And here, so with these three routes supported initially, viewshed analyses were done at 30 and 60 meters from the kill site to the north, and 30 meters, 60 meters, and 90 meters from the what would have been the jump point to the south. At 60 meters from the kill site along the what we're calling the northeast route, you cannot see 39 HD 115, and at 30 meters from the kill site along the northeastern route, 39 HD 115 is also hidden from view. So this route is supported by viewshed analyses. At 60 meters along the northwestern route, you can just make out the kill site in the distance there. You can see somebody excavating, or I guess taking a break. And from 30 meters from the kill site here, we can very clearly see where the excavation is happening. So the northwest route is not supported by viewshed analyses. And to the south, 90 meters from the jump point, you cannot see the jump point. 60 meters from the jump point, you cannot see the jump point. And 30 meters from the jump point, you cannot see the jump point. So this route is supported by viewshed analyses. So here are those same routes depicted on that aerial imagery draped three-dimensional model. And we can see that the supported route coming from the north here kind of goes up a gully and up to the kill site, and one coming from the south kind of goes along this upland to the slope just above the kill site. And it kind of goes between these two glacial erratics as well, which, you know, might have been good landmarks for essentially tracking bison, who knows. However, in the in a historic aerial that's prevalent or that's accessible for the area, there isn't evidence of this cliff, or maybe cliff is the wrong word, but cut bank existing, or escarpment, I should say, escarpment existing as late as 1973. So in 1973, it appears that this was a more gradual and vegetated slope, because it should be, let's see, this is that stream channel, or I should say gully. Right here, the gully. And yeah, so like the escarpment should be here. It really doesn't show up on this aerial image. So that would indicate that this slope is even less substantial in the 70s as it is today. And here you can kind of see that the steepest part of the slope really isn't aligned very well with the center of the bone bed either. In conclusion, viewshed and least cost path analyses identified two well-supported bison drive lane routes, one originating from the plateau above the kill site and one from the lowlands below the kill site. This study's geospatial analyses cannot definitively support the identification of the site as a jumper trap due to viable drive lane routes being identified from above and below the kill location. However, a preliminary conclusion of the site functioning as an uphill arroyo trap seems to be a viable option, given that the slope above probably wasn't all that steep. The kill is currently thought to only consist of a few bison, and there is no current evidence of a corral being present. And here's a little bit about arroyo trapping from Hunters of the High Plains, Kornfeld et alia. And in these types of traps, hunters did not need a large herd of animals to stampede over a precipice to achieve the desired results. 5 to 30 bison could be arroyo trapped. The animals were regularly driven from maybe 1 mile away to the kill location, and this probably has had kind of an exhausting effect. the bison were started up the bottom of an arroyo, which was a path of low resistance. Grade was continually increasing to the head of the gully. Trailing hunters kept constant pressure on the animals, and the bison became tired as they reached the kill location at the top of the gully. Hunters waiting behind a top ridge would have confronted the tired animals and would have been able to kill at least part of the herd, probably with projectiles. This method is common among bison kill sites contemporaneous with 39 HD 115, so sites associated with that period of time. Some avenues for further research to determine the kill type of 39 HD 115 consist of possibly performing a bone breakage analysis of bison bone from 39 HD 115 to see if there are many natural breaks present like would be expected at a bison jump. Also, conducting a geophysical survey might be useful in addition to more excavation to see if any evidence of a corral are present, like post molds or the actual shape of the bone bed might indicate, that the bison were contained within a circular area. Also, analyzing nearby kill sites to see if they have a well-supported kill type that might be indicative of 39 HD 115's kill type might be useful. As an epilogue, in 2023, following research efforts, 39 HD 115 was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, so the nomination was successful. I hope this presentation helped you imagine how bison kill sites function and how people subsisted on the Great Plains around 800 years ago. Thanks to the landowner, land managers, South Dakota State Historical Society, and everyone else who's contributed to research on 39 HD 115. Here are my references. There are quite a few. Yeah, thank you for your time.